Hello, everyone. We are doing our live show today. Welcome to the Prowess Live. I am Leah Steinker, COO at Prowess Project, and we are talking today about imposter syndrome and technology. So I'm just going to make sure we're all set up here and ready to go. Welcome to everyone that is joining us. Please give me a thumbs up in chat if the sound and everything is okay. So again, we're going to be talking today. This is our follow-up from last week on imposter syndrome, where we kind of broke down the ways in which imposter syndrome impacts the role of an online business manager. And today we're going to get started with a question, as we always do. So if you can throw into chat on a scale of 1 to 10, how loud is your imposter syndrome when it comes to learning new technologies? So 1 is super quiet. There's nothing there. 10 is it's so loud it stops you from doing what you want to do. So those inner critics, that inner mean girl is saying, nope, you don't know anything about this. You just can't get it done. So 1 to 10, again, 1 is nope, no imposter syndrome when it comes to learning new technology, and 10 is super, super loud. Okay, so I'm seeing some 6s here. And just to set expectations, 6 is probably pretty normal, right? We do have some level of learning something new. There is we want to do a good job. So that's a good place to be. 10 is what we're trying to avoid. Okay. So I love these. Thank you guys for putting those in chat. And I have another favor to ask before we get started. And that is when it comes to anything that we're talking about today in imposter syndrome, if you guys do have an aha moment or some part of this that you've overcome, if you can drop those in chat to share with somebody else, so that it's definitely going to help someone else who's in this process of overcoming imposter syndrome to hear what other people have done. And if you do have any questions about strategies that you'd like to hear about, throw those in there too, and we'll get to those at the end of the chat. So we welcome anything in the chat that you guys would like to share. So again, focusing on imposter syndrome and how it impacts our learning new technologies or the way in which we interact with technology in our role as an online business manager. Just to share, this is total transparency. Obviously, we all have it from in some point. I have gotten to where technology is not what sets me back, but maybe doing these live shows definitely does. Seeing that, Ashley Connell's here every week, lighting this all up, but this is not my zone of genius. So imposter syndrome is real. We all have it in some aspects. So the more that we share, the more that we help each other, and the more that we just get it, talk through it and work through it, the better that we get, with the end goal. And this is what I want for all of you, is that you have that fulfillment and the satisfaction and all the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. You have. So I'm always here to be everyone's cheerleader, but that's my why and why we're talking about all of this. Imposter syndrome and technology, from what I hear, is one of the number one things that slows people down, especially when it comes to applying for a job. We'll talk about that more, but really that's what stops us, is we see something and we think, I'm not an expert in that, I can't move forward. And then we're not making progress. We kind of get stuck in a loop there. So first, I just want to touch on what we talked about last week, which is the kind of the 5 areas when it comes to imposter syndrome in our lives as online business managers and the ways that we can work through that. So 1 was acknowledgement that it's there. We're human. We all have some level of imposter syndrome. 2, looking at what is true. So we're making sure that we're not bringing in past conditioning or past experiences to our role, and making sure that we can kind of check ourselves and say, all right, is this true? Is this really what's going on here? Or am I getting in my own way? Next is being, again, clear on our why. So just like I said, my why for doing this call, what I want to deliver, I'm going to stay focused on that, is when we know our why of what we're doing, that helps us shift that imposter syndrome and say, yep, it's worth these butterflies. It's worth this nervousness because I'm going to get to the other side of it. Identifying what that outcome is the next one. And again, when you have that goal of, I want more freedom, I want to be able to take vacations, I want to sleep peacefully through the night. When we know what that outcome is and we can check and see, like, yep, today was a better day, or yes, this technology didn't stop me, or look, I'm training the next person. When we know what that outcome is, it's easier to keep moving through it. And then lastly, strategy. And we're going to talk a lot about strategy today when it comes to technology and imposter syndrome. Okay. So again, if you throw into the chat anything that you're hearing, like, yep, that's something I've done, positive experiences, because I promise you it's going to help someone else. And again, if you have any questions about strategies or areas that you get stuck when it comes to technology, put those in the chat as well, and we'll get to those at the end. So going back to those top 5, I think they're pretty obvious on how we move through it with technology, except that we don't always give ourselves the grace and permission in all these areas. So acknowledging it, yeah, when we look at new technology, I think that's when everyone's like, yep, this is new. This is going to take a moment, right? So that one's kind of there, but we also need to just keep reminding ourselves. And I go back to that scenario. The 2 that I'll talk about, the first one, the one I keep going back to, is when we see it on the job description and we don't move forward because we say, I don't have all the things that they're asking for. The second way that I see imposter syndrome and technology slowing people down as an online business manager is when that client or coach, consultant is asking us for something new and we know what it is. We may have used something similar, but we're not an expert and we don't want to overpromise. So we slow down in that area. So those are going to be kind of the 2 scenarios that we talk about today. So going back to these 5 areas, truth is where we're going to spend a lot of time, and strategy. Our whys and our outcomes are usually pretty outlined by our clients, but let's talk about how knowing what is true and what reminders there can really help us move through the process. So first of all, do we know every software that's out there? No, right? So we always want to give ourselves that reminder that something new that we haven't heard of is an opportunity. Can we learn it? Absolutely. We're lifelong learners. We've been learning stuff since the beginning. Can we take the time, or is it going to take time? Yes. Time is a factor in all of this. And we have to keep reminding ourselves what's realistic and how it will impact all the priorities of what we're working on in that situation. So when we can look at something like, let's say someone's asking us to set up a database in Airtable, and we think, last time I had to start from scratch and learn something new, it took me X amount of time. Is that going to fit into here? And that's probably something I need to raise as a question. So again, looking at what's realistic. Another one is, do you need to be an expert in this scenario? Are we telling ourselves a story that, oh gosh, it lists it here, it lists ClickUp, I'm not an expert, they don't want me to apply? Most likely not true. If all of this sounds in alignment with your niche and where you want to go, keep being curious and moving forward. If the CEO is already an expert, that would be another question I'd want to learn, is if they're already an expert in this, can they train me, or do they want to train the next person? Sometimes if it's proprietary software, that's actually what they prefer. Another one is reminding ourselves when it comes to the truth that, like I said, no, everyone's not an expert in every technology. And if you were an expert in one specific one, you're either you're specializing in that, or you're the person that's developing it. For example, right now on my ClickUp task list, there are 2 softwares that I do consider myself an expert in, but they just released new modules in AI or new features. So if someone asked me today, am I up to date on these? I have to say no. I have to go in and learn all the new features that they've just launched. So that is an ongoing part of it. So if you are in an interview or you're working on a consult call with somebody and they say, have you used Asana? Or I need someone who's really strong in that, and you used it 2 years ago. Well, yes, you have used it. You understand that. You're going to have to allow for that learning curve. But usually that's saying, yeah, I need to spend a little time with it. But yes, I'm familiar with what it is. So we're never going to be up to date on every single software. So we have to give ourselves some grace there. And then lastly, is this a technology that you want to be an expert in? Sometimes, and I am very guilty of this, is that we get tripped up when they ask something. Maybe this is a financial dashboarding type software that you know what it is. Maybe you've used something like it or used it in the past and you don't, that's not even close to the niche that you want to be in. It is okay to say no, right? It's okay to just be honest with yourself, be honest with them. It's not something that you want to be an expert in, and keep going with where you want to be. Okay, so if there's any more questions or any more insight, feel free to drop those into the chat. But that's just focus on that truth, because again, know where you want to go, what is in alignment for you, and that will then really help you in quieting down that imposter syndrome when it comes to what you actually want to be doing. Okay, so and how that technology would impact your day. Next, I want to talk about strategy. Strategy is the last one in our kind of ways to move through imposter syndrome. And this, again, I'm going to talk about this one in two ways, is that one, it's either something that it's in the job description and I really do want to go for this job. So what is going to be my strategy to get up to speed or answer the questions in the consult call? Or is this something that my current client has asked me for and it's tripping me up, it's giving me a little anxiety, and I need to have a process or strategy to move through that? So first place I always start with this is writing it out. So when it comes to that why and the outcome, I will open up my Google Docs and I will just start writing down what it is I'm trying to do in accomplishing learning this new software or updating the process that we currently have, so that I can always refer back to this every time I'm getting in there to tackle it. And it helps me, like, remind me where I really want to go, what I'm trying to accomplish. And two, I guarantee that if this is a new software, you're probably going to be using it at some point down the road or something like it for another client, or repeating the process and expanding on it with this team. So having your own documentation is going to save you time, and it's going to help the process with your client. You're going to want to give them back an SOP. So just get in there and start documenting it from the beginning. Okay. And then, so that's my why, that's the outcome. I'm writing all that down and documenting it. The next scenario is in that when we have that job description and there's something I want to learn, I've gotten it clear on that paper, what I want to learn, what I want to do. I know my why. I now need to look at what is all going to go into this. Is there research that's included? How much time does it typically take me? Like, start your own outline and your own process of how you learn something. You want to know, like, if there's tutorials to watch, really, where are you in level setting this? This also just helps me realize, you know what, I'm a lot closer to the goal that I thought I was. Sometimes it makes me realize, oh yeah, now I got in there, I started watching these tutorials and it totally clicks on something that I've used in the past. So again, it's going to help tamper down a lot of that imposter syndrome. Other thing I want you to remember here too is that when you start to watch those tutorials, sometimes we can even get stuck when we're trying it ourselves. Ask somebody. This is a big part of your strategy. Is, you can, if you're in the OBM University, reach out to me. Find out if someone else has gotten stuck in this in the past or wants to talk through it. Making sure that you have someone to go to will really help with that process so that you don't feel alone and isolated, and then the imposter syndrome only gets louder. Okay, and then also that same thing applies if you are currently working with someone on a team within it. Make sure that you're double checking, again, that why, that outcome, you're always double checking that is exactly where they want you to go. So now I want to talk about strategy, the next step in the strategy when you're working with someone. So again, if it is just in the job description, you're going to document that out. You ask, you figure out your whys, all of that. You're going to know how long it's going to take you, the tutorials. You're going to figure out if this fits in your niche, and you're going to make sure you have someone to talk to if you get stuck. That's the strategy in that part. So strategy for when I'm working with a client and they come to me and they want something new, or maybe they want to change the software. Let's talk through that process. So again, I'm going to identify their why, where this came from. So is this politely going to find out if this is bright and shiny object, or is this really where they want to be going? If they're talking about replacing a project management software, adding something new, I'm going to make sure this is where we want to go. I'm going to take a look at my current priorities and say, we had said we're really going to focus on billing this month. Do you want us to stop and start on this project, or is this something that can wait till next month, next quarter? Making sure they're aware of this, right? And sometimes that conversation will put all of this on hold and we realize it's not the priority they thought it was. So I'm really going to make sure we have that. And I'm going to start the same documentation process. If they say, yes, I want to move forward, we're going to start outlining the goal for this. And I'm going to let them know I have a few questions here. Now, at this point, if I'm working with a client, like we talk about in our coursework, that there's the importance of always having a communication plan. So let's just assume with this person, I know how they like questions. I know that I need to keep it short and quick, or I need to come back with an email. I know exactly how to handle this when they've brought something new to me. And I'm going to show them that I do have follow-up questions here before I move forward or just dive in. Then that is when I'm doing that, I'm highlighting my own EQ skills. I'm showing that I'm curious, that I'm a good learner, but I also know how to focus on the main goal. So I'm going to say, you know what, you've brought this up. I have used something like this in the past. I'm not afraid of learning new technologies. So this is how I think these are the next questions that I have. Or I'm going to say, no, I've never used it. I'm going to be honest and say, I've never used this before. It looks like something I've used in the past. Since I'm, I love technology, I'm not afraid, right? So I'm just going to let them know where I am. And I reflect on Brene Brown in this point when she's always talking about clear is kind. And at this part in the process, I'm being kind to them and letting them know what my personal, comfort level is. I'm also being kind to myself, that I'm not over promising anything and then worried that I can't meet the deadline. Okay, so at this point, I've established then my comfort level, my knowledge level, and then I'm going to ask just let them know I have a couple more questions, and I'm really going to listen to where they are, because if I don't want to come across at this point and trigger anything that's going to then flare up my own imposter syndrome, because a lot of times it happens when we aren't getting the reaction we thought we would, or we're trying to meet someone's expectation, and that we're more focused on that than our own abilities. So for example, if someone is really excited about a new software and I have heard of it, but I have no idea what it actually is, and I say, yeah, we can figure that out. And then all of a sudden they start rushing forward. I'm going to be caught up in that wave versus saying, okay, first I have some questions. Can you tell me really, how do you think this will work well for our team? What have you tried in the past that makes you think that this is the right one? What challenges are we facing? And I'm really listening to what they're saying. So I'm not trying to come across as the expert, not trying to come across a know-it-all. I'm really listening to what they're saying. So again, that's highlighting my EQ skills of being curious, being humble, really looking at the big picture. So once I've asked these questions, I'm then going to follow up with, well, there's an Amber Alert. I'm going to follow up with, that was very distracting, sorry. I'm going to follow up with the time frame that I think it would take for me to learn that. And then I'm going to let them know what is realistic. And then I'm going to make sure I stick to that promise. So if they've answered my questions, I'm going to say, now I need to get in there and reflect on this. I need about 48 hours to digest all this, break this down. And then I need to come to you with a couple more questions. Who else might I need to ask? And who else I need to ask and include in any of these decisions? And is there any cost factors, right? So now I just have the general information. These are the reason why I bring all this up, is these are usually the things that when we don't think of them, erode our confidence, and the imposter syndrome just kicks back in, right? There's something I left out. There's something that's an issue. And so we need to just circle back and make sure we have all of those questions answered to just be, it goes back to our strategy. This is what we do. And then once we have all that, we can rinse and repeat this process, right? So we move on to the next phase of getting our hands in there. I'm going to keep my strategy for imposter syndrome and remember that I can do this, come back to them with a solution. They may have some really tough questions. They may have another person that's going to be joining us. So all the stuff could be triggered again, but I'm going to stick with that strategy. So again, on this part of the process with our strategy, we want to make sure that we are documenting things. We are asking the key questions, and then we are honoring the deadlines and the process that we have for all of this. Okay. So I'm going to take a breath there. That was a lot of information. Yes. And thank you for that reminder that I did see that alert was, I think it was countrywide, and it definitely threw me off my game. So anyway, I'm glad we all shared that moment. Any questions or thoughts on imposter syndrome? Anything you guys want to share? Yes. Someone shared here that when looking at project management softwares, a lot of them focus on using the same functionality. So yes, when it comes to technology, you're going to find a lot that is Very similar. So lean into that, and I want you guys all to remember that as online business managers, you have seen a lot. You have that patchwork quilt. You have touched a lot of different softwares. So you most likely will be able to get in there and figure it out. So when we have that game plan of our questions that we always ask when someone says, that's why I talk about strategy so much. Have that same strategy of like, great, I hear you're excited. Can you tell me why? What problem do you think this could solve? What challenges are we currently having that you want to address? Your brain's going to already go to what you used in the past in a different software so that you're quickly going to get in there and see if it has that, right? So like sometimes it's time tracking. Sometimes it's linking to other things, relying on your knowledge with APIs and Zapier. What is it that you want to go quickly find out to see if it's actually solving the solution that they talk to you about? Okay. So again, I just want you guys all to hear that technology is an area I hear from lots of online business managers when they talk about an area where they're like, I don't know if I have all these skills. I'm not an expert. I just want to remind people, like as Ashley says, you do not need to be an expert. You need to be an enthusiast. And I think online business managers can agree that we are an enthusiast on learning new things, right? We typically are the ones that raise our hands when someone says, can you train someone else? We are the ones who like to take on the new project and get it started. So I guarantee you that if online business management is resonating with you, you have the ability to go learn any new technology. And if they need such a level of expert, then that's what they should be hiring, right? They don't need to hire someone who has a general knowledge. They need to go hire one that specifically does that. And that's going to help you flex your strategy skills on helping them see what's most important with their business. All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there with me. Thanks for having fun with the alerts that were going on. If you have any questions, find us on Facebook. If you're in the course, you know where to find me. One more question here. Okay, this is a great one. Feeling inadequate because there are so many technologies out there. This is why we talk about a niche. So again, go back to, do you need to know it? Is it something you want to know? Go back to who you actually want to be serving and focus on those technologies. So for example, if you really love helping people with their social media marketing, then pick 2 in there that are your favorite. You probably need to know something that's a social media manager like Hootsuite. Canva is a good idea, right? And then expand from there. But again, you don't need to know all the softwares that are out there. You don't need to know the top 10. You need to know 1 or 2 and feel comfortable with their features. And then if someone's using something slightly different and you see that in a job description before a phone call with them, you can go do that research, find the key features that are similar, and then learn from them. I will tell you also that a lot of times you will see things listed in a job description, and when you get into the conversation, they say, well, we've been using this, but we don't love it. If you have a better suggestion, or we're looking to replace this software, but we've been using it for so long. So a lot of times what they write down is not the end of the line. It's not the gold standard for them. It's just where they currently are. So guarantee that you have the ability to find something similar or learn the new one. And if it's what you want to learn, if it's in alignment with where you want to go in your niche, then that's what goes back to what I talked about in the beginning, is your own job fulfillment, your own satisfaction, and where you really should be. Any other questions, guys? Okay, this was a lot of fun for me. Let me know if it was helpful. Reach out if you need anything, and we will talk to you next week.